Coming up on Primetime News, after a landmine blast at the DMZ, South Korea's defense minister vows additional retaliatory actions in addition to broadcasting propaganda messages over the border with the North. In the wake of the explosions, all eyes are on what messages President Park Geun-hye will convey in her upcoming Liberation Day speech on Saturday. Plus, China devalues its currency for a second day, sending shockwaves through Asian markets. Korea is no exception. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello and welcome to Primetime News on this Wednesday, August 12th. I'm Hwang Ji-hye.
And I'm Daniel Choy. Thank you for joining us.
We start with the political reaction today to the latest security breach at the inter-Korean border.
It was anger. Lawmakers lashed out at South Korea's defense minister for failing to detect the landmines.
The minister, in response, vowed to expand propaganda broadcasts across the border with the North. Our Kim Young-gil has our top story.
Korea's defense minister Han Min-gu vowed stronger retaliatory action against North Korea for the landmine explosion last week.
As of now, we've reinstated a propaganda broadcasting campaign in 2 frontline regions. I believe this is strategically significant in countering North Korea, and I'm considering other measures.
His remarks came during a Parliamentary Defense Committee hearing on Wednesday, during which lawmakers urged the government to deliver a stronger response. The main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy Party said the incident and the poor initial response had exposed the military's weaknesses. They said someone must take responsibility for what happened and urged the government to punish those in charge of guard duty.
Now is not the time to comment on who should take responsibility. I believe we must first strengthen our combat readiness and better support the soldiers who are patrolling the frontline regions.
The defense minister said the military still doesn't know when or how the North Korean soldiers entered the southern side of the DMZ, adding that the military cannot monitor every spot along the border. Ruling party lawmakers responded by promising to supply more mine detectors for reconnaissance in so-called blind areas along the border. The committee closed the session by approving up a resolution that condemns North Korea for the incident, which it says is a violation of the armistice. The resolution also calls on the North to apologize and punish those responsible. It will now go to the full assembly for a vote. Kim Young-gil, Arirang News.
And while North Korea remains silent over the incident, another response measure is being contemplated. South Korea may burn wooded areas at the DMZ to get a clearer view of the border. Our Kim Hyun-bin reports.
South Korea's defense ministry is considering reinstating an old policy of burning trees and scrubs on the border if they hinder the ability of troops to spot enemy movements. The tactic was used in the past, but was halted in the early 1990s. Fire is the chosen method over cutting, given the number of landmines in the area. The method would only be used in small areas. It would also be undertaken in urgent circumstances.
We will strengthen our border defense so North Korean troops will not be able to cross. We also plan to remove trees and parts of the DMZ to enhance surveillance.
A military official said that if the tree clearing operation gets the green light, the burns will take place in the fall as the land is driest then. In 2001, the 2 Koreas officially agreed to halt burns at the border to better preserve the ecology of the area. Experts say the possible reintroduction of tree and scrub clearing operations indicates the South Korean military wants to take a more offensive approach in dealing with border infiltrations. This comes as the defense ministry confirmed this week that North Korean soldiers snuck across the military demarcation line late last month to lay landmines around a gate guarded by South Korean military. North Korea has yet to issue a response about the incident. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
Now, within North Korea, Kim Jong-un's reign of terror appears to intensify. The young leader has reportedly had another high-level official executed. Citing unnamed sources, Seoul-based Yonhap News Agency reported Wednesday that Vice Premier Choi Yong-gun was shot to death in May after expressing discontent about the young leader's reforestation policy. South Korea's Unification Ministry declined to confirm the report, but said Choi was last seen in public about 8 months ago. Kim Jong-un has executed several senior officials since taking power in 2013, including his uncle Jang Sung-taek and Defense Chief Daniel Choy. President Park Geun-hye today highlighted her two-track policy on the North, offering a preview of what she's expected to say about the regime in her upcoming Liberation Day speech this week. Our Choi Yu-sun has the details.
Speaking to people who made sacrifices for the country's independence on Wednesday, President Park Geun-hye vowed to respond firmly to provocations by Pyongyang. In a reference to North Korea's recent landmine blast in the demilitarized zone, the president said Seoul will ensure such attacks are not repeated, while also laying a foundation for peace on the Korean peninsula. President Park's latest remarks indicate that while she has vowed to maintain a strict policy on provocations, she will likely pledge to continue efforts to revive dialogue with the North in her speech on Saturday, marking the 70th anniversary of the peninsula's liberation from Japanese colonial rule. President Park's message for Japan is subject to change based on the content of Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's statement on Friday, marking the anniversary of his country's surrender in World War II. The most pressing question is whether Abe will follow in the footsteps of his predecessors. In 1993, Chief Cabinet Secretary Yohei Kono, under the Miyazawa administration, acknowledged victims of Japan's wartime sex slavery were forced into prostitution. 2 years later, Prime Minister Tomiichi Murayama apologized for the imperialist suffering caused by Japan to its Asian neighbors.
일본 정부가 역대 내각의 역사 인식을 확실하게 계승한다는 점을 분명히 함으로써 우리나라를 비롯한 주변 국가의 관계를 새롭게 출발시키려는 성숙한 자세를 보여주었으면 합니다.
Considering the uncertainties in Seoul's relations with both Pyongyang and Tokyo, President Park, rather than making a monumental proposal, is widely expected to maintain the core of her current policies. Choi Yu-sun, Arirang News.
In other news, former Japanese Prime Minister Yukio Hatoyama urged the current minister to make a heartfelt apology for Japan's wartime atrocities. Hatoyama, who is currently visiting Seoul, called on Abe to honor the 1995 Murayama statement and repeat key words from it when Abe gives a speech Friday to mark the end of World War II. The former prime minister expressed deep remorse and apologized to all the victims of Japan's colonial rule and expressed concerns on lack of summits between Korea, Japan, and China, blaming Abe for the lack of talks. Hatoyama added Korea and Japan must hold high-level talks as soon as possible. Demonstrators gathered at a weekly rally ahead of an International Day of Recognition for the women forced into sexual slavery by Japan during World War II. The few survivors were joined this week by an unusually large crowd of supporters. Our Connie Kim files us this report.
Every Wednesday since 1992, people have gathered in front of the Japanese embassy in Seoul to ask Japan to atone for its program of military sexual slavery during World War II. This week's demonstration had special meaning as it also marks International Memorial Day, a day of recognition for the so-called comfort women. Kim Bok-dong was among those at today's rally. A sexual slavery survivor, she is firm on receiving an apology for the atrocities she and those like her endured.
The Japanese government has still not said that it forced young women into sexual slavery, but we're going to fight until the end.
The gathering brought together activists and groups from Korea and overseas. Participants held signs demanding legal compensation and an official apology. They stood determined to draw attention to the comfort women's plight.
I've only read the victims' stories, but coming to the rally and meeting the survivors makes me feel more attached to this issue.
The Japanese government should resolve the issue as soon as possible. Most of the survivors have passed away, and many of those who are still alive are not in good health.
Around 200,000 women, mostly Koreans, were forced to serve the Japanese military during World War II. The event was disrupted when a Korean man in his 80s set himself on fire. But the demonstration resumed after the man was taken to the hospital. Later, students sang songs expressing determination and hope that Korea will not back down until justice is served. A huge banner floated above the crowd with a message asking Japan to apologize and atone for its wrongdoing.
Rain or snow, we have come out here calling on Japan for compensation. If Japan is not deaf or blind, they would have heard our voices. As a human rights activist, I am not going to let this happen again.
The women and supporters of the rally say they'll continue their fight for justice. But unfortunately, time is not on their side, with only 47 registered victims still alive. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
A collection of maps that prove Dokdo is Korean territory has gone on display at the National Assembly just days before Korea celebrates its liberation from Japan 70 years ago. For this report, we turn to our Park Ji-won.
You can see about 90 maps from Europe, Korea, and Japan dating from the 16th century to the 20th century. The Dokdo Foundation and the National Assembly Special Committee are co-hosting the exhibit. Japanese historian Norio Kuboi has been collecting the maps for about 30 years. He says historical documents clearly show Dokdo is Korean territory. Korea's two eastern islands, Ulleungdo and Dokdo, are clearly marked on this map of Korea from the early 18th century, proving the islands are Korean territory. This map, made in 1895 by a German scholar, also shows Dokdo, then labeled as the Liancourt Rocks, as belonging to Korea. The rocks are shaded in light purple, the same color of Korea on the map. Japanese maps also prove Japan did not consider Dokdo its territory. Japan made this map in 1811. Neither Ulleungdo Island or Dokdo are outlined with any color, indicating they are not Japanese territory. This official map by Japan's Interior Department in 1880 did not include Dokdo as its territory. Another map from 1905 identified the two islands as Korean territory. Kuboi says after conducting its own research, he became convinced Dokdo belongs to Korea.
The Japanese government has named Dokdo as Japan's Takashima and ordered Japanese teachers to say it belongs to Japan, but I couldn't teach wrong facts.
Kuboi says the Japanese government has never released these documents, but relies on a few unorthodox documents to prove Dokdo has belonged to Japan. He has even received death threats from far-rightists in his own country over his work to prove Dokdo is Korean territory. But the fearless scholar has not backed down. He says he wants people to know the true history.
As a historian, I'm convinced Dokdo is Korean territory, and I think it's wrong that Japan teaches its people that the island belongs to Japan.
The exhibition continues until Thursday at the lobby of National Assembly members' office building. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
And to commemorate Korea's 70th Liberation Day, there are many festivities taking place in Seoul later this week. The celebrations will begin with a special concert Friday evening, August 14th, the eve of Liberation Day. And we will have the lineup that features some of Korea's top singers, including Yang Yi-eun, In Sun-yi, and the girl group Sistar. On Liberation Day, there will be a series of commemorative events at the Sejong Center and the Gwanghwamun Plaza in central Seoul, including an official ceremony hosted by the government. Another K-pop concert will wrap things up on Saturday evening.
China sets its currency lower again today after its surprise devaluation of the yuan yesterday for the first time in more than 20 years. The decision has driven investors to safer assets. Our Song Ji-sun reports.
China pushed down the value of its currency for a second day, setting another 1.6% lower on Wednesday, after lowering it 1.86% the day before. Tuesday's devaluation was the biggest one-day fall since a massive devaluation in 1994, when China aligned its official and market rates. The devaluations follow weakened data that showed China's exports tumbled 8% last month, hit by weaker demand from Europe, the US, and Japan, and that producer prices had entered a fourth year of deflation. The action sent stock markets across the globe spinning, with prices of raw materials and crude oil also dropping sharply. Investors appeared worried that the decision is a sign of Beijing's own growing concern about its sliding economic growth rate and its ability to bolster growth. Demand for safer assets pushed down bond yields in the US and Europe. Beijing's action also weighs heavy on the US Fed and could force it to delay a rate hike previously expected in the second half of the year. For China, the benefits are clear. A cheaper yuan will boost exports by making them less expensive in overseas markets.
I think the present situation won't have a clear impact on the areas of trade and investment. My personal feeling is that, as in the past, the renminbi, and the newest information today that the renminbi has gone down, the adjustment of the renminbi, especially downwards adjustments, will have a stimulating effect on exports.
And as China is Korea's biggest trading and export partner, stronger demand and growth in Beijing will also benefit Seoul in the long run. Korea's Finance Minister Choi Kyung-hwan said the government is closely monitoring the foreign exchange market, and the latest devaluation may have positive effects on outbound shipments, as Seoul mostly exports intermediary goods to China, and Beijing ships them out after final production. 송지선, Arirang News.
And the plunge in Chinese yuan led the local currency to fall to a near four-year low against the US dollar. The Korean won closed at 1,190.8 won against the dollar, down 11.7 won from Tuesday's session. Dealers say foreign investors are pulling their money out of the Korean market and expect the dollar to rise to the 1,200 mark by next month. China's devaluation of its currency also shook the equity market, with the benchmark Kospi dropping 11.18 points to close at 1,975.47 on Wednesday.
Well, it looks like Lotte Group Chair Shin Dong-bin will have his hands full with reform efforts. A new report shows Korea's fifth largest conglomerate will need more than $2 billion to untangle its complicated web of cross-shareholding arrangements. Kim Min-jae gives us the digits and more.
$2.1 billion. That's how much Lotte Group will need to resolve the problems stemming from its complex cross-shareholding structure. The Korea and Japan-based conglomerate has 416 cross-shareholding arrangements. Together, they allow the founding family to control the group with a relatively small amount of shares. Market Tracker CEO Score says Lotte will need to clear the stakes held by 6 affiliates in 3 key subsidiaries, Lotte Shopping, Lotte Confectionery, and Lotte Chilsung Beverage, in order to break up the current shareholding structure. The 6 affiliates hold more than $2 billion worth of shares in the other 3 companies. Experts say due to the complex structure, only time will tell when the process will be implemented. The report comes a day after Lotte Group Chairman Shin Dong-bin issued an apology to mitigate the growing negative sentiment against the retail giant amid a bitter succession battle between him and his older brother. Shin vowed to resolve 80% of the problems with the group's cross-shareholding system and pursue a public listing for Lotte Hotel, the de facto holding company of the group's operations in Korea. A separate report shows that less than 10% of Lotte Group's arms are listed, further demonstrating a need for the group to become more transparent. According to industry tracker Jebel.com, only 8 units were listed among 81 Lotte affiliates. That puts Lotte at the bottom of the nation's top 10 conglomerates, where the average is 16%. If Lotte Hotel is listed as promised, it would only raise the percentage of listed group affiliates to 11%, still far below the average of its corporate peers. Kim Min-jae, Arirang News.
And for today's top international news headlines, we turn to our Lee Sun-ho at the News Center.
Today's focus: Hillary Clinton agrees to hand over her private email server, a missile fragment from the MH 17 site is discovered and rappers attend the movie premiere of Straight Outta Compton.
Well, that's a mouthful sometimes. Well, let's start with Clinton's email fiasco, Sanho.
Well, political opponents have been accusing the Democratic presidential candidate of bypassing transparency laws in March after she was found to have used her private email during the time she worked as Secretary of State. Now, she has agreed to hand over the aforementioned email server, along with a thumb drive, to the U.S. Justice Department while denying the claims.
I think there's so much confusion around this that I understand why reporters and the public are, asking questions, but the facts are pretty clear. I did not send nor receive anything that was classified at the time.
For months, Republican lawmakers demanded that Clinton give up the server for inspection by a third party, but she refused to comply. The private account was linked to a server inside her home in New York, which could have allowed foreign governments to spy on sensitive U.S. government information. By the end of last year, after getting a request from the State Department, she did turn over about 55,000 pages of her emails related to her job as Secretary of State. She even requested the State Department to make them public. But a recent FBI inspection into the security of the federal records and classified information in her emails found that 2 contained top-secret information. Clinton's campaign spokesman says that she will continue to cooperate with the government's security inquiry and address any further questions. And turning to Ukraine, Dutch prosecutors say that fragments of what may have been from a Russian Buk missile system were found at the crash site of Malaysia Airlines flight MH17.
We found 7 pieces, which we established that they were not a part of the airplane. And further investigation, gives us now the conclusion that it's probably is part of a missile system and of a Buk missile system.
Prosecutors have previously said that a missile strike was the most likely explanation for the plane crash, but this is the first time they have confirmed it with such a theory with what may have been a potential physical and concrete evidence. Flight MH17 was shot down on July 17th last year, killing all 298 people on board. The incident occurred during heavy fighting between Ukraine's armed forces and pro-Russian separatists. Ukraine and many in the West have accused pro-Russian rebels of shooting down the plane, saying that they may have used a Buk missile supplied by Russia. And turning to entertainment news, artists and producers Ice Cube and Dr. Dre made their appearance at the premiere of the much-anticipated movie Straight Outta Compton. The film tells the story of the formation of the rap group NWA and their groundbreaking entry into the hip-hop scene in the late 1980s. The group is most well known for their strong lyrics on topics such as drugs, crime, and police. Ice Cube will be played by his son, O'Shea Jackson Jr.
It's amazing, because I know we got a great film. I know people gonna love it. So this is what we all work for this night, for this moment, and I can't feel better.
As for the remaining NWA members, they help the actors on set who helped them play in the film. Performers Tyrese Gibson, Snoop Dogg, and actor Wesley Snipes were also seen at the premiere. Straight Outta Compton will open in theaters in the U.S. on August 14th. And that does it for your international news at this hour. I'll see you again tomorrow.
Today was Baebok, known as the last of the 3 hottest days in Korea, and it certainly lived up to its name. The heat was pretty strong in the capital under sunny skies, but regions down south got a relief from the hot conditions, including Daegu, where the high only rose to 22.8 degrees Celsius thanks to showers and cloudy skies, but temperatures will rise again tomorrow, getting up to over 30 degrees in most parts. And the nation will have sunshine all day long, but there are mild chances of pop-up showers in some of the inland regions with thunder and lightning in the forecast as well. And taking a closer look at tomorrow's temperatures, lows will be kicking off in the low 20s tomorrow morning, but daily high here in Seoul and Gwangju will soar to 31, and Daegu and Busan will see a high of 30 and 29. And as for the other parts, it seems like Daejeon and Jeju Island will top out at 30, while Dokdo rises to 26. Now, this Saturday is Liberation Day here in Korea, and the long upcoming weekend will have a similar weather pattern to what we had this week. But that's all for the weather. Good night.
We've come to the end of our newscast. Thank you so much for watching.
We'll be back tomorrow, same time. Goodbye for now.